Okay, good morning, Mid-Manhattan Adult Learning Center. We are live for our next podcast. I am Carlos Rosas, case manager at Mid-Manhattan Adult Learning Center, and we're happy to have a very special guest for you today, Mr. David Ackert, who some of you may know better as Jamal on the television show Crossroads Cafe. I'm going to bring David on screen right now. And here we are. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. David Ackert.
Thank you, Carlos. Great to be here.
All right. So I'm just going to read a little bit about just so that all our viewers are kind of brought up to speed, if that's okay. David Ackert is the president of Ackert Incorporated and its subsidiaries and business development mentor to thousands of high-achieving professionals in the legal, corporate, AEC, and accounting sectors. He's the founder of several technology platforms, including the PipelinePlus software suite. David regularly keynotes at partner retreats and as a guest lecturer at USC's Marshall School of Business, Carnegie Mellon University, and the UCLA School of Law. He is the co-founder of Voices in Harmony, a mentoring organization that has worked with at-risk youth around the globe. He produced and appeared in the documentary film After Coney, Staging Hope, which I definitely want to talk about during the interview. In a prior career, David was a television and film actor, appearing in over 25 feature films and over 50 TV episodes, including NYPD, Bones, CSI Miami, The West Wing, 6 Feet Under, and of course, Crossroads Cafe. David is a fellow at the College of Law Practice Management. He also holds degrees from Carnegie Mellon University and the University of San Jose. Everybody, please give a warm welcome to Mr. David Ackert. So, I know you have a very busy schedule. You've got a lot going on, so we're going to get right to it. Born and raised in D.C., is that right?
Actually born in the Midwest, but yeah, raised in D.C. That's where I spent my years, basically from the 5th grade up until high school. And then I, as you read, went off to Pittsburgh and upstate New York for my undergrad. And then I moved out to LA to start my first career as an actor.
Okay. And you were born to a Persian mother and American father.
Yeah, my father is has a German background, but for many generations, in America. And my mother was a Persian immigrant, came over from Iran prior to the hostage crisis. And, she and my father met in college here in the States. And then I was born in the U.S.
Okay. How was that growing up? Like, that's a pretty diverse background for growing up in the Midwest, or even I guess I was at DC. How did you kind of stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, well, so in order to appreciate this, you have to kind of travel back in time. We have an appreciation for diversity today, much more so than we did when I was a kid. So when I was growing up in the Northern Virginia suburbs and in the Midwest, being Iranian was not a great team to hail from. It was definitely perceived as a negative. And, we had the Iranian hostage crisis, for those of you who know what that was, in 1979, which created a great deal of tension between the US and Iran. And we really, that country never recovered from that stigma. And so I would get beat up a lot as a kid. I would get singled out a lot. I had a funny name. So my birth name is not David, it's Ramin. And, the kids would make fun of that. And that really is a lot of what eventually prompted finding an American nickname that I could use so that I wouldn't invite that kind of attention as I was going through life.
Wow. It's just strange how the country changes. You hit the nail on the head. We celebrate diversity now, but, I grew up in the Bronx, Latinos, so when you kind of travel outside that bubble is when you realize how different the world can really be. So
even today, I think diversity is celebrated certainly broadly more than it was then, but there are pockets where you definitely are not going to see as much tolerance, as much acceptance as you would in, say, New York or Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. And so it's so funny as I'm reading your bio and I'm thinking to myself, your parents must have had it easy because while other kids were out partying and carrying on, you were busy in the library trying to figure out how to take over the world without harming anybody in the process. Was education kind of like your go-to from the time you were a kid? Is something that was instilled in you?
No, I would say my parents are both musicians, so they didn't have it easy. They were struggling artists for most of their careers, and I knew at a very young age that I wanted to be an actor. So I was definitely invested in becoming as good as I could from a vocational perspective, and studying acting. I went and got my university undergraduate degree in acting, and then I moved out to Los Angeles for that career. And as you read, I had the good fortune of being in a lot of great TV shows. Crossroads Cafe was certainly one of my favorites. But an actor lives a feast or famine lifestyle. So for instance, the year that I was working on Crossroads Cafe, I had a steady job. I was comfortable. I was making money. It was okay. But as soon as we shot that last episode of Crossroads Cafe, I was unemployed for probably 6 to 9 months. And that's kind of how it is as an actor. Until you get the next job, you have no job. And so, I would put together a life just by working odds and ends here and there. But after several years of that, it got very tiresome. And I started to feel like there's more that I can do. I just need to learn more and build my knowledge base and my skill set so that I can do more than just TV acting, because there are some limitations to how much job security is available to an actor in that field. So I, some of the other things that you read off, I got a master's in psychology. I studied business. I learned how I could put some of my other talents to use. And we started the business that I'm running now about 20 years ago. And at first it was just a side job, right? It was just supposed to hold me over until I could get my next acting job. But the acting career kind of plateaued. It wasn't growing anymore. And the business started to grow. And so I realized that this was really where I should put more of my energy. At that point, I had gotten married and I was, looking to build a life, a house for more than just myself. And so it became really important to, lean into where the good fortune was taking me.
Okay, so it's interesting. So what you're basically saying is at one point you really thought acting was the career for you. You hadn't planned on branching out into these other careers.
If you had asked me,
wow.
When I was shooting Crossroads Cafe, if you had asked me what I would be doing 25 years later, I would have told you I'm going to be an actor, of course. But I was wrong.
Wow. I had this vision in my mind that you just kind of like knew exactly what it was you wanted, and I want to do this and I want to do that, and you just kind of made that happen. So in a sense, Crossroads Cafe kind of became a springboard for those other avenues in your life.
I would say Crossroads Cafe validated that acting was something that I was going to stay focused on for a while. And I did. I continued to act for many years after Crossroads Cafe. But what I can tell you is that I never got much more success than that as an actor. And that's when I really had to take a very close look at what I was doing with my life. I had to be reactive to the feedback that I was getting from the entertainment industry, and also from the feedback I was getting inside my heart. My heart was telling me, David, there's more for you out there, but you have to study, you have to learn new things, you have to maybe reinvent yourself a little bit, because otherwise you're going to stay on this road that isn't really going anywhere interesting anymore.
And is that advice you would give to pretty much anybody who's coming into their own at this point, is just not to limit yourself?
Yeah, it's I would just say be open to evolution. We all are evolving all the time, and sometimes we get an idea in our head about who we are and how it's supposed to be and how it's going to be in the future. And we have to remember that we made that up. That's not necessarily how it's going to turn out. We have to keep our eyes open and our ears open. We have to listen for opportunities. And at least for me, I found that led me in a very different direction at some point in my career. And it defined a new chapter, which has been much more successful than the acting ever was, and where I have a lot more control over my destiny. As an actor, you are auditioning and you hope you get a job. And if you don't get that job, then you wait until they call you again and you hope you get the next job. You can't really control the direction of your career very well. But when you're running a company, which is what I'm doing now, I really get to say, we're going to go in this direction now. And you can build a team around yourself that will help you lead things in that way.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Crossroads Cafe. You and I had a chance to speak a little bit before the podcast, but for the sake of viewers. So when the show was conceptualized, it was with the intentions of being a show for English language learners.
That's correct. Yes. From the very beginning, the vision for Crossroads Cafe was there is this underserved community of people who do not speak English as their first language. And we need to create a story with characters who are international in scope, representing different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and a story that's very relatable. You look at all of the characters in that show had either, you have Henry, who's basically Americanized, but his parents are very traditional. You have Jamal, who came over from Egypt and is an engineer, right? He's overqualified to be the handyman at a cafe, but that's the only job he can find. And again, that was a reflection of that era. Back then, if you had a name like Jamal Al-Jabali, your options were much more limited than if your name was John Smith. So the show was trying to demonstrate that even though people may be dealing with circumstances that are more challenging as immigrants or as people who have, a diverse background, they can find their way to something and eventually, find a family, find a community, find work, and hopefully transcend those negative circumstances. That was sort of the message that, I think they were trying to tell with the show. And they built all of that educational material around the show, all of those learning moments in the middle of the episodes. That was all being shot at the same time, with the idea being that this show would be released, as a box set. It would be released and put on the air for this ESL audience. And it aired on PBS for many years with the intention of reaching that group.
Did you ever think, when you and I connected, was that a bit of a shock to you that people are still watching this show 25 years later?
I knew that this show was still in circulation in pockets here and there. I have been contacted from time to time from people who say, I just saw you on TV at 2 a.m. the other night on cable. And they were watching Crossroads Cafe. But, that's one of the neat things about having a former career as an actor, is that you can go on Netflix or Amazon Prime and you type in my name and you'll see some old Monk episode that you can watch that, I shot, 15, 20 years ago, but it's still out there. So these things live on.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the Jamal character. I know with a lot of actors, sometimes what you see on screen is really just a character that's ancillary to your actual personality. How much of Jamal is in David?
Quite a bit. Jamal is very resourceful and industrious. And I think, if you listen to my career path, you can see that I, like Jamal, figured out how I could fix it. Jamal is always saying, don't worry, Mr. Brezhnev, I can fix anything, right? He's always doing that. And that's essentially what I had to do with my acting career. I found that it was going in a direction that wasn't ultimately going to work, and I had to fix and retool it. I think Jamal is a good-hearted person, and I like to think that I am that way too. And I think he genuinely he gets very excited about things, which sometimes I do as well. And has to kind of learn through that enthusiasm that if he just takes a step back, he will ultimately be more effective than if he, dives in headlong and sometimes makes a mess of things.
All right. One of my favorite Jamal episodes is the episode you meet up with some of your friends from Egypt. Well, I shouldn't say you.
That's right.
You all meet up with some of his friends from Egypt, and they're established, and he's kind of trying to hide the fact that he's not exactly where he wants to be yet.
Yes.
I'm guessing you've had some of those moments in your own life.
Oh, very much
based
so.
on what you're telling me with.
Yeah, and this is a journey that I've certainly had to navigate, and I think a lot of people do, is that we all want to be accepted. We all want to seem like we're important. We all want to be admired by other people. And sometimes we don't feel like we can really measure up to that yet. We haven't accomplished those things, and we haven't developed confidence yet in ourselves. What I liked about that episode and really the message in general is that you don't have to go out and get a new job or win an award or, change your circumstances to be able to be proud of who you are and what you have done and what you are capable of. Really, that's something that, in that episode, the message is you have to accept yourself before other people can accept you.
All righty. And I recognize like some of the names in the cast, like, Alan Charoff, Cynthia Burr, people who have kind of went on to kind of make a name for themselves on television and film. Was this kind of like a jump off point for all of you, or were any of you kind of established by that point? Or
no,
and even behind the scenes people?
Yeah, this was probably the highlight of most of our career at that time. And it was a great opportunity for all of us. The producers of Crossroads Cafe were not looking to hire celebrities for this show. The show was on a very tight budget. It was for PBS, not CBS, right? And so we were all very fortunate to have the opportunity, and it ran for 25, 26 episodes, which is also quite a success for that time. Most shows, they would shoot the pilot and you were lucky if you got any episodes after that. But we knew right from the beginning that we were going to be working all year long on these 26 episodes for the show. So that was a big deal for most of us.
All right. And some of my colleagues want to know if you're in touch with any of those, any of the cast.
I became very good friends with David Kirkwood, who played Jess, and stayed in touch with him for a few years after the show. I was friendly with Henry, but I would say the person that I probably stayed in touch with the longest was Gabriella, who played Rosa. And she and I continued to stay in touch not only as friends, but also as volunteers. So when you were reading off on the bio that organization, Voices in Harmony, that I helped to create, she volunteered for us many times as a mentor to at-risk youth in Los Angeles. And she's just a delightful person. And really, I'm so blessed to have known all of those people. But, some of them, obviously, I made more of a long-standing friendship with than others.
Okay. Yeah, I told you prior to the podcast, we have our own Gabriella.
Yes,
that's right. Her name is Angelica Martinez, so I hope she's watching, because Angelica, we always said you were Rosa.
Yes, she has Rosa has a.
So just to recap for those of you who are. Yeah, definitely. And kind of like somebody who can step into a situation and just adapt, but also kind of take charge if necessary. So that's a special personality right there. Was there a lot of that in Gabriella as well, or?
Yes, I think Rosa is probably a little more organized than Gabriella is, and that's probably true for all of us. Our characters had certain characteristics that were very pronounced, because at the end of the day, it's a half-hour show. In a half hour, you've got to really get the essence of who this person is and what they're likely to do, so that you can start to weave a story together around those dynamics.
All right. Yeah, if you get in touch with her, we'd love to have her on the show. All right.
I could probably
So,
track her down. I'll see if I can do that for you.
would be happy to have her on. Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about after Coney staging Hope. I think it's that you did that film and that you well you co-produced it and appeared in it because there was a period of time where that that era in Uganda was kind of the cause of the day. Coney 2012, I'm sure you remember that, and then it just disappeared. So it's great to know that you kind of went back to kind of see, okay, well, what's the aftermath of this? So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure.
And
So,
did you actually travel to Uganda for the project?
yeah. So my co-founder for Voices in Harmony, which is the nonprofit organization that we started back in the mid 90s, we worked initially with in Los Angeles with at-risk teens. And that's the organization that Gabriella also volunteered in for a time. But in the mid-teens, Melissa went over to Uganda and discovered that there's this civil war. And at the time, it was the longest standing civil war in recent history. Like it had been going on for over 20 years. And we knew that, Coney was a big part of the problem out there, that he was abducting, particularly northern Ugandan kids. There was a really unfortunate situation where they were, the kids were being turned into sex slaves or child soldiers. And we wanted to do something about that in terms of going out there, shooting a documentary that tells that story and demonstrates what's happening, and particularly the impact on the youth out there, the younger people. And then we brought that documentary back to the US. It ended up on Amazon Prime, which you can still download and watch it there. But we used that as part of an initiative that really was in concert with Coney 2012 and other organizations and projects that were trying to get the government to pay attention to this crisis. And eventually there was significant funds that we were able to raise and send to Uganda for health and education through our film. We helped to contribute to the $20 million appropriations committee funding that went out to health and education to Uganda at the end of the Bush administration. So there was a lot of good that came from that project. Some of it we directly influenced, and some of it, indirectly. But I'm really proud that we spent the time that we did to go out there, meet those people, and bring their story back here.
Okay, and forgive my ignorance because I have to be very honest. Once that story kind of faded from the media, I didn't really give up with it. But Coney was actually removed from power at one point.
Yeah. Eventually, a few years after the film was released, they found him, and he was removed from power. And his, I think he retreated, at least his army retreated into Rwanda or somewhere else, in that area of Africa, and they lost a considerable amount of their momentum.
Wow. Okay. And where do things stand now? Is it still?
I actually don't know. To your point, it has faded from view. I think primarily because that faction is no longer terrorizing northern Uganda as they were. Now, northern Uganda has 100 other problems they're dealing with, including poverty and the fact that AIDS is still a big deal out there, in that area, and they're tremendously under-resourced in terms of health and education. So at least one of their problems has gone away, but there's still a lot to be done in that area for those people.
And as a result of the film, in the process, did you or any of the cast or staff help bring refugees over from Uganda, or was that kind of not part of the?
Yeah, that was never the mission of the film. The film was intended to be part of an awareness raising campaign, so that we could secure funding from America, from both private donors and from the government, and be able to send that money over. We wanted to be able to impact a whole group of people, not just, one or two. So that's why we approached it in that way.
Okay. All right. So once again, for those of you that are tuning in, we're here with David Ackert from Crossroads Cafe, President of Ackert Incorporated. If you have any questions, please make sure you direct them in the chat section. We will get to your questions in a couple of minutes. Mr. Ackert doesn't have all day, so we got to kind of get right to the heart of the matter. Let's talk a little bit about your business ventures. Now, at some point, you realized, as you said earlier, that the acting career was, I'm trying to remember exactly the phrase that you used, not hand to mouth, but you said.
Yeah, I would, something like that. I mean, I could see that it was not going to be something that I was going to be able to sustain myself with long term, especially once I got married. It's easy when you're alone and it's just you, and you can live hand to mouth, as you say, and you'll do it because you love the art, you love the craft of acting. But once you start to, at least for me, once I started to move into a position where I needed to think about more than just myself, then it became time to reevaluate how I was building a future.
And you decided to go back to school?
That's right.
So
I increased my studies. Yeah. My studies significantly, and eventually studied psychology and business and a few other things that helped in the building of this business.
Okay. And what you do now is pretty much business mentoring.
Well, it started off that way. Over the last 20 years, we've started developing software that complements the business mentoring that we were doing. And now the company is becoming more and more a software company with the business mentoring kind of on the side.
Yeah. So again, evolution. Kind of started off with one thing.
And when we talk again in 5 more years, it will probably look a little different. Again, it's very much a matter of swimming with the current. You swim down the river and suddenly you realize the currents are shifting. And in my experience, I've found that if I can just feel that current and swim with it, I go a lot further than if I stubbornly keep going in the same direction that I was going before.
And well, tech has kind of been one of the industries that's, I hate to use this word, but because I don't want to be insensitive, but it's kind of thrived throughout COVID. One of the few industries it has. So I'm assuming that in that sense, it's given your business opportunity to grow.
Well, I will tell you that when COVID first hit, our business really was very negatively impacted. We were down 40% basically within the first quarter or two of COVID. But we were able to stabilize and get the company, back on the right track. And now, fortunately, we're moving in a more positive direction. But, I think at the end of the day, large tech companies like Google and Facebook and, those places are more likely to be able to weather a major economic change like COVID brought. And smaller tech companies like ours are very much beholden to the shape of the marketplace. So, it's, yes, we are part of the tech industry, but that's a very broad group of companies.
Okay.
There's a spectrum.
All right. Now, it mentions that you do have a bit of a law background. Did you ever practice, or did you just kind of delve into the business end of law?
Yeah, I married a lawyer, so that's how that began. My wife is a lawyer, and it was really she who pointed out that there is a current here that we should follow, because what she observed at the time as a practicing lawyer is that lawyers learn about law in law school. They never learn about how to run a law firm or how to run a successful practice. So that's where we started doing our business mentoring, is helping to balance out that skill set. It's not dissimilar to what I understand you and your organization are doing, right? You're helping to round out people's skills so that they can be better prepared to thrive, as you say, in their career. So we started doing that for lawyers, giving them business skills, business development skills, that sort of thing. And then that evolved into where the company is now, where we discovered we can do a lot of that work through technology, through e-learning, through online means. And that way we can scale the business better. We can impact more and more people than if we're just teaching in a more traditional sense.
Mhm. And throughout all this, as your business is growing and you're evolving, do you still get the occasional call for, hey, we have another episode of whatever coming on. Are you interested? Like,
I got a few of those calls after I had officially retired, and it was very satisfying to tell them that I was not interested.
Oh, you're very lucky. You're in a position where you can turn some work away, right?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't say it to be arrogant at all. In my experience, I'm not very good at doing 2 or 3 things at once wholeheartedly. I have found that if I really just dedicate myself in one place, I can be successful. But if I am of 2 minds of it, then I'm apprehensive. I'm kind of leaning in this direction, and I'm kind of leaning in that direction, and I'm not fully leaning in either. So recognizing that about myself, I really decided that once I was going to turn the corner and give this business all of my attention, that I couldn't allow myself to be distracted, even if it, had a certain nostalgic feel to it, or if it was flattering or any of those things. I had to be very disciplined and stay on the track.
Yeah, well, it's got to be rewarding considering that at one point you really thought that's what your life was going to be. And now you're in a position where it's kind of like, no, I found something that's better than this.
Yeah.
So,
I am, honestly, I'm very relieved because I didn't think I would ever find anything that I enjoyed as much as acting. And when I discovered that there's a lot of creativity in running a business and creating software, in helping people all over the world in ways that I'm not even, present to. A lot of those were some of the things that I liked about acting, that creativity, that ability to inspire and move people. And when I discovered that I can do that in a way that also allows me to have some control over my career and my destiny, that was much more favorable for me.
Okay. We have a fan who would like to ask a question, Alessandra. Alessandra, can you hear us?
Alessandra appears to be muted.
Appears to be muted. I am trying to unmute her, but there seems to be a problem here. Let's see. Let's try this one more time. Muting the mic. Yeah. Okay, Alice, if you can hear us, what you may want to do is log off and try logging back on because there seems to be a problem with the connection. So we'll see if she's able to do that. Okay, I think she's back, and here we are. Alessandra, how are you? Oh boy, we're having a problem with the mic.
You're still on mute, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, how are you, Alessandra?
I'm very good.
Okay, you're on live with David. You can give him a question.
First time I'm very wonderfully happy for have you, David. I was on the Crossroads Cafe. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm very so excited. Let me answer the question. For me, my question.
Okay, Alessandra, your signal's a little spotty. All right. Oh, she'll come back on in a minute. We'll clean up. We did have a question from another student who shall remain anonymous, wanted to know your age and your marital status. You're spoken for, apparently. But how old are we, David?
I'm 51 now.
51. Wow. You look great. It's strange.
Oh,
I'm 43. And when I was a kid, when you were 43, it was over. Like, just move to Florida
Right,
with a metal
exactly.
detector, go on the beach, and that was it. But I mean, age is not what it is, what it was back then. So, all right. My my boss actually wants to join the podcast for a moment as well, but let's see if she logs in. I think we got Alessandra back.
Yes, I'm back. David, I want to ask you,
Okay, there we go.
uh-huh. What motivated you help with the people in Angola, in other country?
One more time, Alessandra.
What motivated you help the people from Angola?
What motivated you to help people in Angola?
In Uganda.
In Uganda, yes.
Uganda. Yes. So, we were already doing a lot of volunteer work in Los Angeles with youth, with at-risk youth. And my co-founder had a relationship with some of the nonprofit organizations that were doing work in northern Uganda. And so she connected us to those people, and they proposed that we take our mentoring program and run it in northern Uganda under the protection of those NGOs in the war-torn region, and then shoot all of that as a documentary and then bring it back to the US so that we could raise awareness and funding to help those people in Uganda. So that's how all of that happened.
Oh, this is very nice. I'm very motivated when I heard about you, because about Jamal. Now I know about you.
That's
I'm
right.
very happy, and all my classmates, they want to ask about the question. And what do you feel about episode 11 when the police get Jamal?
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that episode very clearly, and it is one of the messages that I really appreciated about that episode was how the police didn't mean to be disrespectful to Jamal, but they couldn't help themselves. They would call him buddy, they would call him pal, they wouldn't use his name. They would be very suspicious of him for no real reason. And again, this was reflective of the times, but I think it's also true today that when we see someone, we tend to make some decisions or some assumptions about them that may not be true. And so that episode was really a good reminder that just because you see the color of someone's skin or you hear an accent doesn't mean you know anything about them, and that you have to give them an opportunity to express themselves and their true intentions rather than just allow prejudice to guide your impressions.
Yeah, that episode helping also me or my friend, my classmate, about you need to go outside, you need to have your ID.
Yes, right. That's right. That's a good reminder.
Yes, because from Brazil, but I'm now in America, you need to use your ID all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very
Anything else,
Alessandra?
Yeah.
Thanks, Alessandra.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Do you have another question? Okay. I think we right. I think we lost the signal. Okay. We're approaching the top of the hour, so if you have any other questions for David Ackert, please make sure that you drop them in the comments section. And also, don't forget to make your presence known, your name and your speaker's name, so that we can give you credit for this. Okay. Your favorite
I saw a couple questions in the chat. If you want me to respond to any of those.
Please do. Please do. Yeah.
So Patricia's asking, what's the name of the show? The show is called Crossroads Cafe. And Jose is asking, what inspired or motivated you to study acting? So Jose, my parents were in the performing arts. They are both musicians. And so I grew up with the arts around me. And I had always been very fond of the idea of acting. And I think what inspired me was that I grew up during a time when being Iranian had a lot of, it was a very difficult time to be Iranian and to identify with that country. And so I liked the idea of a profession that would allow me to explore being different people, because I was very uncomfortable as a young kid with the kinds of prejudice and racism that I would experience as an Iranian boy. So that's really one of the things that had me explore acting and really fall in love with it, is that it enabled me to experience what it's like to be different kinds of people. And it was a healing opportunity for me as well, to come to terms with who I am and my own background.
Okay. We have one student who asked if you can go to Burkina Faso to help over there. I don't know how familiar you are with the situation in Burkina Faso, so if there's any students.
I so appreciate that. The Voices in Harmony organization that I was a part of that went to Uganda has really concluded. We finished that work a few years ago. And some of the reason that we did that was we discovered that there are many other organizations that are better qualified and better funded to do much more meaningful work in that arena. So rather than try to recreate what they were doing, we decided that we would focus on the things that were, important in terms of our own careers and our own families and our own lives, and allow the professionals to focus on that work.
Okay. Your favorite acting gig of all the things that you've done, I guess, which is the one that you've enjoyed the most?
I would say there were two. Crossroads Cafe was one of them. And the other was a film called Maryam, Maryam, where I played an Iranian immigrant who comes to the US during the hostage crisis, and he falls in love with his cousin, which is not unusual in Persian culture. And but she is Americanized, and they are not, she doesn't resonate with the way that this character, his expectations culturally, he's very traditional. And so it ends up being an unrequited love story set against the backdrop of the 1979 hostage crisis. So if you go on Amazon, you can look up Maryam, Maryam, and the film is there if you're ever interested in watching it. That would be the second one that I enjoyed.
Definitely. Definitely. Was this an independent film?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I have another question being texted in right now. All righty. Oh, wow. Would you look at this? We have a teacher from another site who's joining us. It was completely unexpected. So it looks like the word is getting around now. Were you involved in any of the storylines at Crossroads Cafe?
Not really. So, we would be given the script for each episode, and then we would read the scripts together as a cast, and the producers and the directors would listen and make sure that it's all making sense. And occasionally we would be able to give some input, because the producers and the directors didn't necessarily have the same diverse background that we as the actors did. And so we might be able to say, it might be more realistic if we approach it this way, or if we say the line a little bit differently. And so there was some flexibility afforded us for that. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that the people who ran this show were educators. And so they were very careful about how lines are written and said and what's being communicated. So it wasn't as free form or improvised an environment as some other shows that I've worked on. They weren't just trying to create a creative experience or an entertaining experience. They really wanted this to be an educational show first. And so, that certainly limited the amount of exploration that we could indulge in after the scripts were written. Very
interesting. I hadn't thought of the fact that educators were involved in the actual creation of this show. So
very much so.
Yeah. Yes, Sesame Street is created by highly intelligent people, very educated people. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which I'm sure we both grew up watching, Fred Rogers was way ahead of his time. Ahead of his time. So PBS, they get their props for that.
That's right.
All right, David, we're approaching the top of the hour. As I understand, you're on the West Coast, so we're approaching 9 o'clock. You have a meeting coming up. Do you have a few minutes, or we have to wrap this up?
Maybe for one more question. Let me just make a note here to my team that I'm going to be running a little bit late, and then we can maybe do one more question and wrap it up.
Sure. Okay, so this will be our last question from Leslie Williams. It says, in retrospect of raising awareness, would you say that much has improved in Rwanda?
In Uganda, so we were never in Rwanda. I would say that there have been improvements in Uganda simply as a function of, you know, the Kony's resistance army is not the same presence as it was, you know, 15 years ago. They were literally terrorizing villages in northern Uganda, terrorizing the Acholi people. They were kidnapping their children, turning them into sex slaves, turning them into child soldiers, you know, ruining families, ruining communities, mass murder. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible situation. And that LRA, the resistance army, has been disbanded. And so the people of northern Uganda are no longer being terrorized by that group anymore. So yes, from that perspective, I would say it has improved. But as I said earlier, I think there's still a lot of work to be done in that region and many regions like it. You know, you have people who are dealing with poverty, they're under-resourced, they don't have the educational advantages that so many other people enjoy, and they don't have the health care. You know, if they get sick or if they are malnourished or if they, you know, God forbid, they contract a disease like AIDS, which is still a big problem out there, there isn't a lot they can do about that. So they're still, you know, fortunately the NGOs are funneling resources over there, but it continues to be a problem for many countries like Uganda, when there just isn't the infrastructure and isn't the support and isn't a government there that can really take care of its people in a more fundamental way.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. We're very happy to have you here. You're a bit of a Renaissance man and an inspiration to all of our students, whether they're studying English as a second language or preparing for high school equivalency, whatever the case may be. The lesson being that you never know where life takes you, so you gotta be ready and you gotta be willing to take that risk. So thank you so much. We're going to definitely spread the word to support all your work. Definitely going to put the word out to support Miriam and Coney. So videos available on Amazon Prime. We'll create some links and put them in the chat section. But thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, this was a real treat. So for all those viewers out there, please don't forget to type your name in on the chat section with your teacher so that you get credit for attendance. Very special thanks to Alex Figueroa at Level Geek, who's kind of been our unofficial consultant here for the show, making sure everything kind of runs smoothly. So we'll let you get to work, David. Thank you so much. And this is a great time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And thanks everyone for attending today.